The story starts with a young girl named Cairo Sweet, whose lawyer parents are always away, leaving her in a big house in Tennessee all by herself. Writing is her way out of loneliness. Dressed in a short skirt and tall socks, she makes her way through the forest to get to her school. There she meets Jonathan Miller, the teacher of her class. He's much older than her and has given up on his dream of being a writer to teach instead. Despite the age gap, Cairo looks up to him almost like a father but also admires him in secret, choosing his class on purpose. Cairo gets to class early one day, and Jonathan, surprised, asks her to start reviewing the semester's reading list. He's impressed when she says she's already familiar with all 12 books they'll be discussing. During their chat, Winnie, who is repeating Jonathan's class and is a good friend of Cairo, shows up and they plan to grab a bite to eat later. Curiosity gets the better of Jonathan after they leave, and he starts looking through the books on Cairo's desk. While he's reading, his friend Boris comes by, grabs one of the books and jokingly reads the more risky parts out loud. Jonathan tries to get him to stop, but Boris keeps going, especially intrigued by a book Jonathan himself wrote. Jonathan was taken aback to find out Cairo owned his book. Back home, his wife Beatrice was immersed in work on her laptop. He attempted to engage with her but soon realized she was too occupied. So he called her excitedly to discuss that a student was reading his novel on their own. Their conversation was interrupted by a call from Beatrice's coworker Amy. After the interruption, Jonathan whispered playful and affectionate words to Beatrice, leading them to share a drink and grow closer. Just as they were about to become more intimate, Amy called again, leaving Jonathan frustrated. The next day, Jonathan told Boris about his less-than-ideal weekend, prompting some friendly teasing from Boris. While they were chatting in the field, they saw Cairo coming out of the woods. Despite his recent disappointments, Jonathan couldn't help but watch her approach. As Cairo neared, she removed her earphones to say hello. They asked if she was afraid of walking through the woods alone, to which she confidently replied that she was the most frightening thing in the woods. In the locker room, Winnie deliberately dropped her things to catch Boris's attention. Boris, realizing her intention, approached her to see if she needed help. It was clear that Winnie was trying to attract Boris for personal reasons. In Cairo's home, the two pals, Cairo and Winnie, were spending time in Cairo's bedroom. Cairo was feeling anxious about a question on her college application regarding her most significant accomplishment, and she couldn't think of any. She sought assistance from Winnie, who offered several suggestions, but they all seemed too ordinary. Then Winnie had an idea. Cairo could impress their teachers and craft an essay about that experience. Cairo was puzzled by this, especially considering the significant age difference between them and the teachers. Despite her reservations, Winnie, known for her flirty nature, persuaded Cairo that it was an acceptable strategy. She even suggested that Jonathan, a teacher with his kind and gentle demeanor, would be the perfect person for Cairo to interact with, hinting at a more intimate connection to alleviate any nervousness Cairo might have. Winnie's influence made Cairo increasingly curious about intimacy. Winnie claimed she had noticed Jonathan paying extra attention to Cairo, which caused Cairo to feel both excited and shy. As time went by, Cairo's curiosity only grew, and she often found herself daydreaming about Jonathan during class. One day, Jonathan asked Cairo to meet him in his office after class. Jonathan invited Boris, Cairo's friend, for dinner with his wife. Boris agreed and danced before leaving. After Boris left, Jonathan tried to copy his dance moves. That's when Cairo walked in. They laughed and started talking about Winnie. Jonathan admired Cairo and Winnie's friendship. They talked about where Cairo lives and her essay. Jonathan liked Cairo's writing so much that he remembered it all. Cairo felt happy and flattered. Jonathan suggested Cairo write a new story, including her favorite author. He said she wouldn't need to take a midterm if she did. Cairo was excited and agreed. She mentioned she read a book by Jonathan and liked it, quoting parts of it. Jonathan felt happy that his work meant something to Cairo. He suggested they meet over the weekend to talk more about the story. Later, they were having dinner at a bar. Winnie came to take their order. After she left, Beatrice asked if Winnie was the student Jonathan talked about earlier. Jonathan said no, but Beatrice seemed jealous. Beatrice openly criticized Jonathan, making him feel small. That weekend, Cairo went to their meeting spot, looking for Jonathan. Suddenly, Jonathan appeared and whispered as he sat next to Cairo to talk. Jonathan said they had been practicing writing while listening to a man named Elliot recite poetry nearby. Cairo watched Jonathan, impressed by how focused he was on the performance. After talking about Elliot's recitation, they shared a cigarette. Cairo offered one to Jonathan, who took it without hesitation. The following day, Cairo turned up in eye-catching attire, bringing coffee for Boris and Jonathan. Boris questioned her choice of clothes, but Cairo shifted the focus to Jonathan. Sitting close to him, their growing bond was evident through their playful banter and shared cigarettes. On his way to class, Jonathan got a message from his wife proposing a weekend trip, which thrilled him, especially with the playful suggestion she included about taking turns. After class, Cairo quickly sought out Jonathan to talk about her short story. Jonathan, pressed for time and eager to join his wife, hastily gave Cairo's work his approval before leaving. In the classroom, Winnie was having fun near Jonathan's desk when Boris walked in looking for Jonathan. Instead of informing Boris of Jonathan's whereabouts, Winnie flirted with him, teasingly placing his cell phone in her cleavage. At the same time, Jonathan's getaway plans kept getting delayed due to Amy continuously contacting Beatrice. Waiting, Jonathan received a call from Cairo through his bag's phone. She explained that her phone had mistakenly ended up in his bag. They conversed briefly, with Jonathan's wife also on the line, upset about their ruined weekend plans. Jonathan offered to return Cairo's phone to her, acknowledging Cairo's warning about the impending rain. Jonathan set off only to be caught in a sudden downpour. He arrived to find Cairo stepping out in a provocative dress amidst the rain. Their eyes met, and overwhelmed by emotion, they shared a passionate embrace and kiss in the rain, leaving them both dazed. After this intense encounter, Cairo handed Jonathan his midterm exam, snapping him back to reality as his wife asked for space. Distracted by his presence, Jonathan then retreated to a small house outside their main home for solitude. Immediately, he printed the completed story by Cairo and dove into its pages, captivated by the mature and engaging narrative. As the plot reached its peak, Jonathan's imagination ran wild with images of Cairo in the pivotal scene, fueling his desire. The next day, Cairo was very excited and wore a special dress to impress Jonathan. But when she arrived, she noticed that Jonathan wasn't acting like usual. He didn't even say hello to her, which made Cairo worried. She asked him if everything was okay. Jonathan then told her he wasn't happy with the kind of stories she wrote. He said they were too explicit and not suitable. Cairo tried to explain that her writing reflected their relationship, but Jonathan didn't agree. He didn't like her work and felt he made a mistake by trusting her. Cairo got really angry and accused Jonathan of being jealous because he couldn't achieve what she did. She even said his own writing was boring. But Jonathan insisted that they should keep their relationship strictly professional, just teacher and student. This made Cairo even more upset. She dared Jonathan to fail her in the upcoming exam. Feeling heartbroken, Cairo went home and drank alcohol with her friend Winnie, feeling betrayed by Jonathan. Meanwhile, Jonathan, feeling hopeless, also started drinking. Beatrice, Jonathan's wife, noticed he was upset and asked him what was wrong. Jonathan hesitated at first but eventually told her about the problem with one of his students. He was disappointed with a story he received because it was inappropriate. Beatrice found it interesting and asked him to read it out loud. As he read the most intense part, Beatrice got excited and hugged him passionately. Their moment was cut short when Boris suddenly entered the room, leaving Jonathan to explain himself. In another scene, Cairo expressed her frustrations to Winnie, convinced that Jonathan's disapproval was feigned. Winnie, attempting to engage Boris to no avail, found her efforts to stir his interest ineffective. Observing this, Cairo chose to escalate the situation by sharing an intimate moment with Winnie, capturing it in photos meant to catch Boris's attention. Following this, a call to Jonathan from the principal's office relayed rumors of an incident involving him and Cairo, which Jonathan firmly denied to his wife. Beatrice warned him of the potential repercussions on his career and marriage, should these allegations prove true. The narrative then shifts to the next day, with Cairo absent from class due to a meeting in the principal's office. While Winnie's melancholy was apparent, lingering after class with a heavy heart, Jonathan spoke tearfully about Cairo's significance to him. Yet he remained detached, disregarding her attempts to make him feel guilty. Later, the deputy principal called them both for a meeting to discuss the incident. Cairo shared the full story, and when it was Jonathan's turn, he appeared nervous and guilty. Joyce, noticing Cairo's consistent account, decided to suspend Jonathan. As Jonathan left the office, Boris told him he was disappointed and warned him to be more careful to avoid more problems. Then Boris left Jonathan alone. When Jonathan got home, he told Beatrice he got suspended. She asked him what happened, but Jonathan didn't tell her the whole truth. He just said he had shown favoritism to Cairo in some ways, which Beatrice found hard to believe. Beatrice kept asking questions, until Jonathan couldn't hide his feelings for Cairo anymore. This caused a big fight between them, with both of them saying mean things and expressing their frustrations. Beatrice, feeling determined, thought about getting a divorce as she left. Meanwhile, Winnie talked to Cairo about what might happen to Jonathan because of her actions. Cairo, feeling unaffected, proudly said that causing Jonathan's problems was her greatest achievement. She even mentioned it in her college essay, seeing it as revenge for being underestimated. Cairo's essay hinted at what might happen to Jonathan in his marriage, job, and their relationship, ending the story with a lot of consequences and surprises. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. See you in the next video.